Alrighty, week 5. So I think we're getting up to speed now. Things are moving along. We've got the midterm and a few weeks off. Tonight we're going to talk about credit. Credit it's something you got to be able to figure out. There's just really no way around it. I mean, there's a certain group of people who may have got involved with credit cards and gotten in way over their head and had a bad experience and have sort of stepped back from that, or maybe you don't have a credit card yet. It's credit cards can be very useful, but also super damaging. And I guess we're really talking about the broader thing of all credit. So credit is basically borrowed money, right? Credit funds provided by the creditor to the borrower, repaid future time with interest. So types of credit: installment, non-installment. So non-installment is going to be, like they say, maybe a credit card or something like that. Typically going to be pretty high interest rate. Security is what kind of determines the interest rate that's going to be paid. If you're somebody who doesn't pay their bills, if you're somebody who takes out a personal loan, just meaning guaranteed with your signature rather than some collateral, that interest rate is going to be quite high because that creditor is not in a great position to recover the money if you flake out. As opposed to typically with installment credit, there's something on the other end. Maybe you took out there's some sort of collateral. You took out a house, home mortgage. You took out that you've got a car on the other side that's identified as collateral, and you probably went through a few more. Well, you might have gone through a more extensive credit process. You certainly did if you got a house. Anyway, so the creditor is much less likely to be defaulted upon by you, the borrower, so they can afford to charge a lower interest rate because they're not as exposed to as much risk, and they'll still make a profit. So things like repossessions and home foreclosures, those are a good thing. That's it's not good for the individual, but the fact that mechanism is out there legally established to recover things from people who don't pay their bills is necessary, and it makes the market efficient. If those mechanisms didn't exist, like we had that situation back during COVID where you couldn't foreclose on things, that's going to drive interest rates through the friggin' roof. Houses will be unaffordable because nobody's going to lend on them, because if they're taken out of their hands, they can't recover them. So anyway, but credit is something you got to be able to figure out. Revolving open end, so again, like a credit card type thing where it changes from time to time, not a fixed payment like an installment credit. Advantage of using credit bills or credit, that's kind of a circular argument, whatever. The advantages of using credit is, in my mind, the biggest advantage is, there's some simplicity to it, but it's also the fact that you can kind of max perform your finances. You don't have to keep as much money in liquid cash lying around that, number one, it's just going to be kind of awkward. I mean, there used to be the day where, I'm very much dating myself, but, you want to use a credit card and, oh my God, everybody else in the line, if you're in some retail thing, they're kind of upset because they got to pull out this stupid machine and roll it back and forth and get those little raised numbers on the card, and then you got to sign. Now it's just the opposite. The dude who's paying cash is delaying everybody. People who just use their chip and they're in and out. It's much quicker, so it's much easier. But again, getting back to my main point, if you can keep the amount of just idle cash sitting around and be disciplined and have that money in something that's more of an investment, a long-term type investment, or even a short-term investment, but something that's earning interest and not just floating around out there, that's a good thing. If you use a credit card, you've got a certain day of the month that bill is due. If you meet that deadline, let's say you run up your bill to 10 grand. Most people don't have 10 grand in, liquid cash every month, but if you're going to run up your credit card to 10 grand in a month, you got to have that kind of money because you want to pay the bill in full. If you pay the bill in full, you're a convenience user. Credit card companies make their money two ways. The guaranteed way they make the money is the 3% or whatever that they charge the retailer, the vendor, whoever accepted the credit card. They don't make any money from the customer in every transaction, but in most transactions they make a bundle from the customer because people let their credit go. They carry a balance, and the interest rates they charge are confiscatory. They're huge. They will lead to your financial ruin. So you can't do that. But just the same, if you don't have a credit card, it's going to cost you a great deal of money as well, because you're not going to be able to buy things for the same price as somebody who's got a credit card. For example, try and buy airline tickets or a rental car or do any of that. Go up to the counter and say, no, I don't have a credit card. If they do rent to you, it's going to be a lot of money, and there's going to be some awkward form of deposit you're going to have to put down. Even a debit card, a lot of times they're like, yeah, no. I mean, if you show up to some place, a hotel, and you don't have a credit card, they look upon you as defective. They're just like, okay, there's a reason. Back when I was flying, there was always a thing about, navigators, people who, weren't the pilot. They were also air crew, but they weren't flying. And that was always the joke that, to be a pilot, you normally need a 20/20 vision. And if you had a navigator with 20/20 vision, it's like, whoa, why is he not a pilot, And that was the thing, you don't know what's wrong with him. Why did that not work? Now, again, there's absolutely nothing wrong with being a navigator. There's only so many pilot slots, but obviously most people preferred the other. I don't know how I got off on a tangent, but anyway, you display that you've got some credit issues if you don't have a credit card in your possession. And again, if you're like, I don't want to use a credit card, because some people can't, they don't have that direct correlation between, using a credit card is just like spending money. They think it's somehow, not, get the credit card, but just don't use it. Just use it for deposits or whatever. You can go to a rental car company, depending. I mean, if you're actually going to settle in the airport, they'll typically say, do you want to leave it on the card or something like that? If you say, no, I want to settle up in cash, in most cases they don't have a problem with that. Although anymore, I think it's even settled by the time you check it in. The dude walks up to check the fuel tank and hands you your receipt, and it's already charged. So if you did want to put in cash, you'd probably have to tell them beforehand. Now, that being said, too, I will, for certain items, this whole notion that the retailers pass on the credit charge, that's fair. But again, it does kind of make me want to go someplace else. I guess it's fair, but anyway, I have a mortgage that I pay every month, and it's a whopper. It's on a big chunk of raw land, 338 acres, and the company or the organization that does it, they'll take a credit card. It's like, are you people, stupid here? You're getting 3% less every month, and I use a credit card with no service charge. I mean, I'll do it. I mean, that's miles for me, but it makes it convenient because I don't have to be fiddling with checks and mailing things or doing debits. It's just I like using credit cards when I can, and if they're going to do it without a service charge, without some sort of convenience fee, well, giddy up. But it doesn't make any financial sense on their end, but that's their matter. Disadvantages using credit. Yeah. So again, like I say, when I used to sell stuff, in terms of horse equipment, I would do this sort of psychological analysis of the person, going, is this person going to spend a lot more if they're using a credit card? And or are they going to buy an exact amount and they're already, negotiated the price down low, I may just say, yeah, no, I can't take a credit card for this. If they wanted some special deal that cut into my margins, which weren't that high anyway. Anyway, but yeah, that 3% comes out of my money. So, and it depends on where you're located. In Las Vegas, for example, I lived there for a couple of years when I was flying down at Nellis, and wow, personal checks there were worthless because it's just a whole city full of, by and large, deadbeats who didn't pay their bills, and so cash was king, or credit card with multiple forms of ID and all kinds of other stuff. In the States, as opposed to Europe, they're much more anxious to take credit cards with very little security on there. And the credit card companies, they they assume a certain amount of flakiness, that they want to encourage more credit card use, so they don't have probably the best security measures in place. If you go to Europe, very few. In fact, if you're going to use a credit card in Europe, you might want to make sure you know the PIN that's associated with your credit card, because typically there is one. Because in Europe, it was what they call chip and PIN. You're in a restaurant or something, and you put your credit card out there, and they walk up there with the little machine, if they've got one, or you go up to the counter, and you swipe your card or tap your card or whatever, and then enter the PIN. They and the notion that a signature, I have the worst signature, whatever, it's the most generic thing, and they don't even look at it. My cards aren't even signed. There's no added. It's just silly, the security. But what that does is it transfers the if a merchant accepts a credit card without looking at the ID, and there's some sort of fraud involved, that's on the merchant. The credit card company many times. It's between them and the merchant, but if you didn't get a signature or were flaky in processing the credit card company, sometimes the credit card companies will come back on the merchant. But anyway. Okay, so excessive spending, large accumulation of debt. Oh yeah, you can just, again, people don't have that association with money, and they should, but they don't. And so yeah, you could ring it up to the limit. But well before you get there, you've probably gone many months of paying tons of interest, and all those charts that show the power of compound interest, how $500 a month can go up to $5.1 million. Those charts work even better when the interest rates are 26%. You can charge some, minor charge into a tremendous amount of money by just letting it go. Don't do that. All kinds of credit laws that do sort of protect you, and some of these are quite good actually, as opposed to using cash again. I'll make the argument that, for example, I had one of my daughters. She flaked off and left her keys up here in Alaska, and went back to college in Alabama, and I had to mail her the keys. And anyway, in the interim, she had to stay in one of the airport hotels. Right there, she went to a hotel that was literally a couple miles away, and the dude charged her $50 on the credit card. And she called me in tears, and I'm glad she didn't get in a fist fight with this dude. But anyway, I immediately called the credit card company and said, "Hey, this is a ripoff." And the credit card companies are so happy to deal with you because they haven't forwarded the money to the vendor yet, the merchant yet, so that it didn't cost the credit card company anything. They just don't pay the vendor, and they follow up with the fraud charge. Now, if you let it go a few days and they've already settled up and they've already paid the cabbie in this case, they're going to be a little more difficult. And if you let it go over 30 days, now they're going to be like, well, yeah, you're outside the limits. You screwed up. So their level of cooperation varies, inversely to the time that's elapsed. And obviously they're the credit card company. When you call them up and you say, "Hey, we just got ripped off," they're gonna say, "Oh, because you're such a good customer and we're such a good company, we're gonna take care of this for you." And you could, kind of be a jerk and say, "Well, actually, you're required by law, the Credit Card Act of whatever. Maybe it's the 2010, whichever one it is." But there is a mechanism to in law that some of those issues need to be resolved. But they'd rather, and whatever it takes to get them through the day, they can make it sound like it's just out of their kindness, but it's encoded or enshrined in law, I guess. Okay, impact of credit payments on savings. Yeah, I mean, if you end up with a whole bunch of debt out there, it's going to affect. I would argue that, yeah, no use of credit, savings, spending. Anyway, they're looking at kind of small ball type things here. You're, like I say, the way you're going to generate wealth, if you're fortunate enough to, is by having excess money to invest and then get your money working harder than you. So the whole strategy here is to make your cash flow, your day-to-day living expenses, keep them completely under control and very efficient, freeing up the maximum amount of capital that can be invested on your behalf, so that eventually, as you grow that nest egg, you can live that life that you want. Okay, credit history. Yeah, pay your bills. Yep. Credit insurance payments under adverse conditions. So history is obviously, yeah. If you get a single late notice, that's not going to be forwarded on to the credit bureau. But if you go into default, or if you do a bankruptcy, yeah, you're done for quite some time. They clear off your credit. It all goes back to zero. But it is apparent to everybody what's just happened. When they look at your credit history and there's a big blank for 7 years, oh, this guy's, declared bankruptcy once, he'll probably do it again. Do not give him credit. So, an absence of history speaks volumes as well. Credit insurance, again, good thing for the most part, but again, it's not done out of the kindness of your heart. Let's say you have a credit card, or more importantly, it's usually on a home mortgage. They'll send you a thing saying, "Hey, we're such great people. We've given you a credit life insurance policy," meaning that if in the event of your death, your mortgage will be paid off in full, and we're doing that. The reason they're doing that is they don't want to be, in a tug of war with a grieving spouse trying to get the mortgage paid. They're going to take out a life insurance policy on you for the amount of the mortgage, and oh, by the way, you're going to be the one ended up paying for it. It's going to be included in your mortgage. But it does have a beneficial effect in the fact that your mortgage will be taken care of upon your death. And so you'll see that on certain credit contracts where they'll want some sort of provision in there. But don't be under any illusion in terms of who's paying from that, and that it is mutually beneficial to a lot of you. It's an ugly thing, depending on how you look at it. They're called peasants policies. I've got I wouldn't call him a friend, but a guy I know who is just, the dude is the way he runs his life. He's not long for this world. He's not that old, but anyway, I didn't do it, but if I was somebody like Walmart, for example, you could look online. I'm not making this up. It's called a peasant policy, and Walmart, I guess, just knowing the type of people they hire sometimes. And again, if you work for Walmart, my apologies, but anyway, they saw those folks as being kind of in the same boat as the guy I know that whatever is at probably a higher risk, and they go so far as to take out, and it was bad PR for them when it became known, but they were taking out what they call peasant policies on their employees. meaning they would take out life insurance policies on their employees, listing Walmart as the beneficiary, meaning, yeah, we just hired this guy, looks a little sketchy, and we're kind of placing a bet here that he might die, and if he does, we get $25,000 or whatever the amount was. I mean, it's fairly ghoulish. Not the most ghoulish things we've seen of late, but that's definitely not you kind of give up your whatever access to the world of humanity when you start doing things like that. Credit bureaus, again, a necessary evil. There's the three big ones. What they do is they are companies that are kind of in the consumer intelligence business, if you will, where they track people's credit and figure out who's kind of naughty and nice, and then assign them a score, what they call a FICO score. They've been under scrutiny by, obviously, the government, since they do wield a lot of power. So by law, they have to provide credit reports annually. Now, what they've argued for is that they don't have to provide your FICO score. So if you're just curious and you want to know, do I have a 700, 800, whatever your score is, they don't have to give you that. They can sell you that. But they do have to provide you a basic report. Another thing about this is if you're denied credit, if somebody says, yeah, your credit's not so good, we ran a credit check on you, they also have to provide you a report right then. So if you want to be, uber vigilant about this, you can actually get 3 per year, because there's 3 of these big guys, and each one, you can request a report, and then if you're denied credit, they all have their own little proprietary information. And for example, like if you want to go get pre-qualified for a home, it used to be $50. It's like everything else, it's probably gone up by now, but that was for your credit check. These companies, whatever one your mortgage company chooses, pays their money to, they give them $50, and they give you all, whoever gives them $50, and they provide the credit check to them. And you'll also see when you're looking at your credit report, which you should do, you'll see at the end page or whatever, it'll say something about companies that have requested your credit history. And I know the credit card companies probably aren't paying $50, but they are paying something. And if you notice, there's typically a correlation between the junk mail you receive and who checked your credit. If you see, American Express made a credit inquiry, and then all of a sudden, boom, you start getting all these solicitations in the mail about, hey, take our credit card. It probably means that, they checked your credit history and decided, you weren't so much a deadbeat that they will offer you credit. So, this is a challenge in its own. And it also is a testament just how messed up these dudes are. I've, had the pleasure, whatever, of being divorced, 2011, so a long time ago. They still got my dad all jacked up. My ex-wife, when she moved, I was only married once, and they still have our data like commingled. And so when they're asking me, did you ever live at this address? And it's, some obscure address. I'm like, no, but I know my ex-wife did, so I got to put yes to that one. And it's just, that's how they identify you. So their information's jacked up to begin with, so you got to kind of go through there and make sure it's all right. These people, though, man, if you let your credit report get out, you're done. I mean, it's got everything on there. Identity thief, if he had the credit report, they would have some real power. Negative information. Typically, it's just like nothing to report. So you can go through a credit report quite quickly. Accounts turned over to collection agency, so anything bad. And list of companies that requested, that's that last item. The thing about this, though, it's kind of good to go through a credit report because, I mean, if you're like me and you're, kind of cheap and trying to squeeze things a little bit, I'll get a Home Depot card, for example, and I think they give you 15% or something the day you originate it, and you don't have to pay for 6 months, but you got to be a new customer. So I'll get their silly credit card, and I'll use it that day, and then maybe let it go the whole 6 months and pay it off. But anyway, as soon as I get that thing done, I absolutely cancel that card right then, because I don't want some credit card out there floating around. But also, I want to be a new customer next time I need to buy something big. And so I've gotten canceled their card, I don't know, 5, 6 times. So, I mean, maybe it's a little extra work, but, if you're buying, this last time I think I bought a big, huge freezer. And it was $800 or $1,000 worth of stuff. And, it's nice to get that little bonus. But again, but what I'm saying is if you look at your credit report, you'll see, Home Depot Consumer Credit or Citibank or whoever they're affiliated with. And oh, yeah, that's right, I need to cancel that one. And just go through and kind of clean house and make sure you don't have open accounts. So, yeah, this is just a generic report. Again, though, super powerful if somebody had a, identity theft motive. Credit score, all kinds of things. They are not going to tell you, you did this and it affected it that way. No, it's all smoke and mirrors. They just float out a score. And the scores don't typically, they're probably close, but they're not. It's not a mathematical formula that's some exacting science. It's fairly subjective, and they have different criteria they use. So your credit score can vary amongst them. But there's things that you can do that will greatly affect your credit score. And one thing they do not like is when they see you going out and applying for a bunch of credit. Like if you go car shopping for one day and the salespeople, and again, my information's dated because I don't buy new cars. But anyway, I think I still know how it works, where you go in there and the salesman, they always want to run your credit. Oh, let's see if you're qualified. What they really want to do is they want to, get you one step closer to actually buying that vehicle. But if they do run your credit, and let's say you go to 3 dealerships, your score will be lower by the end of that day. Because when you go in there and you're looking at, 30, 60 grand worth of car, and then you go out to someplace else and you're looking at 30, the credit card company, or the bureaus going, oh, well, it looks like this guy's potentially going to take on $180,000 in debt or something like that. And then, like one time I was buying a big piece of equipment, and I was going to get it on a loan, and I came up with a better way of doing it, but I was looking at actual banks to get a business loan on it, and the rates and the terms were just stupid. They had prepayment penalties and all kinds of extra stuff that I wasn't happy with. So I never did it. But finally, I got a letter from the mortgage company that I did not even discuss this with, and then also a phone call from the mortgage company asking me if I'm having some financial issues, and they were concerned that I'm going out and getting a bunch of loans, and I'm on the hook already with a mortgage for them, and they felt that my credit was being jeopardized by the fact that I was taking on a bunch of loans. So anyway, they can affect it, and they will. Credit payment history, credit utilization, new credit. So again, that would be, and again, these guys are completely guessing because the credit bureaus are not going to, and there's 3 of them. They're all different. But the types of things they're looking for. Yep. Yeah, as long as you're above maybe 700, you're golden, you're fine. But if you start getting down in the sub 600, you're not going to get the better interest rate. When you go into someplace and you go to apply for a loan, not everybody gets the same interest rate charged at them. The people who represent a lower risk as they proceed by a low or a higher credit score, they're going to get a better rate than you. So, yep, if you write a letter, you can even put a statement in there. I mean, the statement may or may not be valuable, but and I'm not all bad, credit and bankruptcy and all that stuff. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. We're not talking about it this week, but when we start talking about healthcare, it's a freaking disaster. And if you look at the number of bankruptcies in the United States, I don't know what the percentage is. Maybe I'll do that before now in the lecture, but it's a lot of folks that are, good, responsible, pay their bills, and then all of a sudden they're faced with a family member who's got a situation, and yeah, they're going to do whatever's necessary and probably never be able to pay the hospital or whoever's involved. So that's what caused a lot of people to go bankrupt. Improving, discourage credit cards, keep balance up, and call creditors. This last one is actually, it sounds counterintuitive, but if you call some credit card fix agency thing, oh boy, you've got a bad situation and you're making it worse. Number one, you got another credit card bill because these people they're not working for nothing, and you're the credit card companies, they are for the most part going to get their money. Now, if you call the credit card companies themselves and then maybe even get a referral to they've got kind of a group that works with them that helps people get their credit back under control, because now you're kind of aligned with the credit card people when you actually fess up to it and you say, I've got an issue here. They have the ability to perhaps restructure the credit card. Now they may say, hey, we're going to have to suspend your credit card, but let's get this existing debt that you got out there, let's get that consolidated on an installment type loan where you're making payments on it at a much lower interest rate. If you agree to pay the thing off and do the rest of it, I mean, I've never had to deal with these people personally, but this is their the way they claim to be doing business, and it does make business sense rather than have you declare bankruptcy and default and just skip out on the whole loan. If they can put you on payments, lower the interest rate, and get you back under control. So, and oh, by the way, we'll talk about bankruptcy a little later, but just because you declare bankruptcy, it's not like a get out of jail free card. If you've got a job, for example, there was real estate boom back 2007, 8. Well, actually, it was just a little prior. The wheels came off the bus in 2000. I guess it was 2007. But there were some doctors. I was down in Florida at the time, and Florida is the Wild West when it comes to real estate. There's certain markets that are just crazy. And anyway, this was in Pensacola, and these two doctors had bought a married couple, each one of them doctors from Atlanta, big money, $1 million penthouse thing they'd bought on the top of this beachfront condo, and 1.2 million or something like that. They hit hard times. The loan, everything got screwed up. They sold it for I guess $200,000, and they declared bankruptcy. And yeah, no, if you go before the judge in a case like that, they don't put them under a normal Chapter 7 bankruptcy. They can go for what they call Chapter 11. The court doesn't need to accept the bankruptcy. The court can say, oh no, you don't just get to walk away from this. You're going to be basically under the wage earner plan. And the court now, you've basically shown your hand that you're not good with money. You're not responsible. We're going to take charge, and you are going to pay these people, and we're going to, start attaching your salary and garnishing your wages and doing all this other stuff to make sure these people get paid, and you'll get an allowance for your business expenses. And we'll be the ones to look at your situation and decide what your needs and what your wants are. And oh boy, if you got a boat, if you're driving anything but a little Ford Fiesta or something, maybe that's determined excessive, and we're selling that, and it's just you've you've ceded control of your finances in your life over to the court until this situation gets resolved. So there is some justice out there, but anyway, again, these people speculating on property where they didn't have the means in case things went bad, and they did go bad. But if these people wouldn't have been so overextended and would have held out, on that condo like they had, I'm sure that condo was back even, I guarantee you, by 2009. And at this point, it's probably a couple, 3 times worth what it was. So again, when you get credit overextended and you can't cope in a bad situation, you're in trouble. Okay, reviewing your credit report. Make sure it's accurate. Lenders, see what they're looking at. So it's good data. Here's the breakdown where they say people are. So again, it being in the upper half, above 700. These are, subterranean type people down here. These people, I mean, you're in bad shape. FTC.gov. So the problem with trying to get your credit report is there's a whole bunch of people. If you go out there and search on Google for free credit report, you may find this site, but you're going to see a whole bunch of other sites that look like free credit, but what you're really signing up to is a subscription offered by the borough or somebody else, where it's a trial subscription, and they send you credit reports, and they give you your credit score, and they do all that. But if you don't read the fine print, you've enrolled in a subscription, and even if it's free, they're betting on the fact that you're probably going to forget to cancel, and they're going to be able to charge you. So make sure you go to a .gov site, and we'll look at that in a second. In fact, we can just look at it now. Control click. Skip verification. I didn't know. I think it's going to work. Yeah, so it works just fine. Anyway, FTC, somewhere buried in here is the credit report. I'm sure I skipped right by it when I was scrolling. Get your free credit report. Okay, so now we're leaving the government site, so they got to send me a warning, probably. How to get your free credit report. Okay. Extra steps. Just want it. Annual credit report. So again, it's a bunch of redirects, but we're still within the .gov site. Now we leave. And request your free credit report. Boom. And then you start filling out all your stuff. And you're off to the races. So anyway, I'm not going to stop. I think at some point in here, it's going to say which bureau do you want it from. You don't need all 3 because you may want to save the other 2 in reserve for doing that later. Now, what you're going to do with that in terms of this class is you're absolutely not going to send it to me. You want to view this thing and then, clear your browser and make sure you're not having this thing get out. Because again, this has got great information if somebody wanted to scam on you, which leads us to identity theft. Identity theft is wrong. I was going down the Glen one day, and I get a thing about my account from Wells Fargo. My transfer from my credit card to my checking account had been declined, for $5,000 or whatever. I don't have an account with Wells Fargo. I really dislike Wells Fargo. And so I call them up and I say, hey, I think I've got some credit card fraud. Again, this is one of the reasons I do not like Wells Fargo. Well, we need your account, sir. Well, it's not my account. I don't have an account. Well, sir, without your account, I'm just like, I'm losing my mind. they finally they looked it up under my social because the dude who done this down in Oklahoma, um, they had established a credit card, they established a bank account, they established all kinds of stuff using a Oklahoma address, an Oklahoma phone number. I mean, everything was down in Oklahoma, and anyway, they they were horrible throughout the process, and it was in the middle of COVID. I actually had to go into the branch, and it was years of my life gone, and a bit of money. So you gotta. I don't even know how you protect your data on that one. I mean, I don't know where they got the data, but it takes some doing to undo that mess. I don't know that I felt violated, but whatever. I yeah, it's just a huge, huge time suck, and can be a lot of money. So the main thing you got to do, it wouldn't have worked in my case, but the most common fraud is credit cards, and most credit card companies, they have little algorithms or whatever, and they do some kind of geolocation to you and your credit card and some of those other things that will kind of tip them off. You'll get a text from them. We just had a bunch of charges. Was that you? And if you say no, be prepared for your credit card to absolutely not work for a while until they send you a new one. And not a big deal though. Just do it and get the new one on the way. And they can do expedited mailing to you. You don't have to, they'll want to send it and take them a week, but in most cases, they'll send it to you overnight if you ask for it or if you're spending a fair amount of money because they don't want to lose you as a customer. These guys are, they're 30 years old in terms of their information, not, calendar age. Yeah, so these are all like back when stuff was on statements and stuff. Statements now are usually pretty good. Most of the identity thieves now, they're probably not even on this continent. They're someplace else, and they're most of the. If you notice on most of your statements now, it's just got the last four of your account. So it's far more lucrative for thieves to do it electronically than these old paper methods. Skimming, sure, that still works. And I've had just outright things where you give the server your card. Oh, I don't know if you gave me your card or I lost your card. Well, it's like, yeah. And then this was in Eagle River, and sure enough, I'm buying, not me personally, but my credit card was buying everybody's drinks at Odd Man Rush. But hey, Odd Man Rush they were idiots enough to take it. I like those people. I know those guys, but dude, you should not have taken my credit card because clearly, you didn't do the proper identification. All they had was the credit card, so they obviously didn't match it to an ID, which most merchants won't. But because they didn't, all those charges were on them. Sorry, I'm not paying for it. And so, but again, that comes between them and the credit card company. Yeah, we know you get tons and tons of things about your account doing this or that, mainly on text messages. Sometimes you actually have an account with the company, sometimes you don't, but that's just a scam. They want you to tap on the link and get your information or change your password. I mean, whatever. It's predatory. They're mainly preying upon older folks that aren't nearly as savvy as most of you are. Fishing, farming, so crime rings. It's same people. It's probably the people involved in this are, I would say well, I guess they could be slaves, but they're mainly doing it in duress in some sweatshop in some far off place. I have had the mailbox violated. Yeah, they actually stole my passport, and I guess they got it back. The only way I found out about it was APD calling me saying, "Hey, we've had your passport for over a year now. We're going to have to destroy it if you don't come pick it up." It's like, maybe if you would have told me you had my passport, we could have. Anyway, I didn't even know they had it. I filed a police report on it, but I had to get a replacement, but whatever. Protecting against identity theft. So, yeah. Really, you kind of have to stay vigilant. You have to look at your statements. This gets back to the credit card companies being oh so nice if you catch the theft in the first couple days, and more disagreeable as it gets further out. But this whole thing about writing social security numbers on checks and wallets, and yeah, it's kind of old school. Most people don't do that. Funny story about this. I'm very much dating myself, but when I first was in the military, I was overseas. They said, "Oh, make sure you mark all your equipment." So my big, stereo receiver and all my electronics all have my name and social security number engraved on them. So not only does the thief have my stuff, but they also have my ID. So, sometimes whatever. They recommended doing it, and I did it, and there you are. We know about security. Most e-statements kind of eliminate a lot of this. Personal checks, yeah, that's not that big of an occurrence. Okay. I did have another somebody stealing stuff out of my mailbox where back when I was still getting my bills not paperless, they would give you these silly convenience checks. Number one, don't do that. If you use the convenience check, they charge you 10% up front, and they also charge you as a cash advance, and there is no grace period. They start charging you interest on it immediately. So anyway, somebody got in the mailbox and they wrote a check for something for $300, and first thing I knew about it was I see the credit card statement and I've got $330 in some sort of check that was written, and that was all fairly easy to undo. But again, whoever took that check, that's on them, because they clearly didn't see the proper ID, because it wasn't me. So again, so big things to do. Check your online statements. Even if you are getting monthly statements mailed to you or emailed to you, you pretty much got to check it sometime within the month to see what the transactions are occurring. And it also helps to, again, have your finances under control, where you have the bulk of your money, if you have some, in a brokerage account or something like that with a couple factor authentication to it. Like even crypto, some people do self custody, but I also have my stuff in what they call a vault. So even though it's being stored by the company, by the brokerage, in this case Coinbase, my coins or whatever, some of the shrapnel stuff, are in what they call a vault, meaning that if I want to take any money out of that account, I have to acknowledge via email, and then I think I have one of my daughters on it as well, where they have to okay it on an email, and then it still takes 24 hours before the money can be sent. So it really screws up an identity thief, because the transaction is going to be delayed by at least 24 hours, and now they got to hack multiple email accounts to get it done. Now, if that was a checking account, that would be unworkable, but it's not, so. And then in the checking account, if they, hack into that, we're not talking big money, and it's going to be very apparent. So, identity theft insurance, yeah. I usually get notes, when you're dealing with some sort of credit card company and they've had a data breach and all your information's out there, and now they're not going to probably do any better, but they are, as a free service, going to send you enroll you in some free credit agency that's going to warn you. Yeah, they're usually late. I'll withdraw money from an account, and a day or two later I'll get a thing, oh, there was a withdrawal from one of your accounts. Well, yeah, thanks for letting me know. That happened days ago, so not so great. Police don't really care, but you have to still file the police report a lot of times, and it's a joke. I've done it before. You pay them 15, $20, to file the report. They give you a copy of it. You know, the boys from the crime lab are not getting on your stuff. They don't care. But as you'll see when you go to file a claim for something to get reimbursement from the company or something, they're going to require that a police report had been filed. So you got to do it. FTC, yeah, probably bigger fish to fry and other priorities. Credit reporting companies, if it's getting large scale and your credit report has been adversely affected, creditors who may be impacted, yeah. This kind of brings up another point. I used to, and I still do, if I have a bunch of credit cards, a bunch of ID kind of stuff, and I'm going on a trip, it does help to take a picture of kind of the contents of your wallet. It's super sad. If you've ever been to certain places, I've seen this in France and Istanbul and Florence and Venice, some of the big tourists, Rome. France is the worst, though. Right at the base of the Eiffel Tower, they've got a big speaker system that warns you in multiple languages that there are pickpocketers in the area and to be careful. Why are you spending the money on these stupid? Why don't you take care of the problem rather than? But anyway, so pickpockets, especially in Europe, exist I think to a larger degree than they do over here. And my point is that if that happens, and you want to cancel all your credit cards so no abuse is done, all the numbers were on those credit cards, all the account numbers were on the credit card, so it could be helpful if that were to happen. I've had it. In fact, I was in Madrid, and I knew exactly what was happening. I was getting off the metro late at night, and this weird altercation kind of thing was happening right around me, and then I instantaneously, just because I was paranoid, Spain is Spain, and I reached back for my back pocket where I keep my wallet, and sure enough, there was a dude, grabbing at it right then, and then they both jumped off. I mean, they had it timed with the metro, where the doors are closing, and all three of them jumped out, and they got nothing. But if I hadn't been kind of spring loaded to protect my wallet, it would have been gone. So I may have actually had it in my front pocket, and just because I was paranoid about those guys on the metro, and they were reaching into my back pocket. But in any case, they got nothing. Equifax, one of them, Experian, TransUnion. So the big three. I don't mean to be going off on war stories, but I think, believe me, in Europe, the scams that take place over there are just incredible. Some of the Eastern European countries, they send some folks up there that are just, they are creative. You'd go to ATMs. There was one on down by Plaza del Sol in Madrid. I'd go down there all the time, and there was an ATM that never ever worked. I lived there for, I don't know, a couple 3 years, and that was a bogus ATM. You would put your card in there, and it'd say, no funciona or whatever, something in Spanish to let you know that the credit card machine or the ATM was not working. It never worked. It was like a card reader. You shove the card in, you type in your PIN, and then it comes up and tells you it's out of order in Spanish. Meanwhile, they've recorded your credit card information, they've got your PIN, and by the time you get to the next ATM to actually, they've already scammed you. And that information, they've already hit your account. So be careful. Managing your credit. So kind of redundant to the last chapter. Yep. This is the good news, Exactly. Monthly statement for record keeping, all good. Disadvantages, yep, people will get into trouble. What I was explaining about the interest rates and how it can get out of control, you just have a small amount, but you're 1.5 per month. That's not even what they're charging, at least 2% per month, right? It's at least 24% a year. So, yeah, these numbers are low. Normally, you type in your social, that gives them access to your credit report, and then it'll ask for your annual income, and then boom, here's your credit card. They can get it all from that. Yeah, kind of the big boys. There's other ones that come and go, but they're more like vanity cards. Don't be caught up in the trap of, oh, I'm going to impress people with my American Express card. No, most people are not. It's not impressing the people you think it is, and the annual payments are pretty high. There's certain stores, I don't know, that if you're not using their credit card, you need their credit card in order to get the discounts. But for the most part, I would avoid them. Credit limit, overdraft, annual fees, and incentives to use the card. So, you have to look at the situation. What kind of user are you? Do you want one of these cash back, no frills cards, or do you want, kind of the Alaska Miles one, and it's a annual fee and the rates are high, but who cares if you're not paying the interest rates because you're a convenience user, and if the annual fee is outdone by the travel you're getting, maybe it's useful. I've never ever qualified for the super nice ones that will get you access to the airport things. I think I was Ruby. I was told by the lady at the counter very nicely that Ruby is kind of a garbage mineral in their eyes. It's not a collectible gem. I was not worthy. Grace period. Yep. So get it in before the grace period and don't pay the interest. You have to look on the actual card. Cash advances. Yep. I'm not sure if you guys can hear the puppies in the background. I think they're waking up. I've got 2 puppies left. They go home this week. If you get a cash advance, it's going to be excessive. Here are some of the fees. So again, 2% per month or better. I'm going to pause this for a second. So the interest rates can be quite excessive, and typically these rates would be viewed as usury, but again, they are affiliated with states that have lax usury laws. So the max interest that can legally be charged, it can be quite high. Finance charges, yep. Interest charged on the balance. So if you let it go, if you miss that date, they're going to start charging you interest. The method they're going to use, you'd have to read the fine print on your card. But again, it doesn't apply to me, and it shouldn't apply to you if you pay off the card every month. Simple interest rate is one thing, but you're going to be paying compounded interest rates where interest is being charged on interest. Everything, when you're looking at financial type stuff, simple interest rate is not a meaningless term, but it's not, you can't make valid comparisons with it. For legal purposes, if you're ever comparing things in finance and they say, oh, it's at whatever interest rate, it has to be APR. If it's not APR, annual percentage rate, it's not a valid comparison. So that's the legal standard is APR. That means something in terms of, some screwy way that they may cherry pick the dates and come up with some sort of calculation. It's not valid. APR means one thing and one thing only. Oh yeah, the higher the interest rate, the higher the payments. So, yeah, this is just a something showing simple interest rates. I mean, you can get a loan. I guess we're getting away from credit cards at this point. We're just talking about credit in general. So there may be certain things where you're charged a simple interest rate. Yep. So it does accrue. Vanish charges. So typically that's a block you want to look for on your credit card statement. Number one, you want to make sure you know all the charges, all those actually came from you. And then look at the finance charge section. And if it's not zero, either go, I screwed up, or wait a minute, there shouldn't be a finance charge, and call them and figure out what happened, or text them or chat with them or whatever. Minimum payment. Yeah, if you make the minimum payment, you're still paying interest. So, I mean, that's the part you got to make just to avoid the penalty. Scrutinize statements for errors, dispute errors. Yeah, they're usually online. Again, these guys are kind of dated. Phone systems now are just, I don't know. It's a bunch of AI. Just trying to get to a human is going to be difficult. Credit Card Act. So again, things have changed a bit, but there are extensive protections for credit cards that kind of evolve and change over time. Pay credit card bills before investing in money. That is necessary. I'd like to think, and this has been an exceptional year for some investments, but even so, you can't really out invest credit card interest. Those guys are making money, and if you're using credit card bills, if you still got a balance out there, you're essentially using money that's financed by a credit card to make investments, and that will not work. Avoid credit repair services. Those are the guys, the commercial, the .com this or the whatever, they're going to fix your credit repair and stick it to the credit card company. Yeah, no, credit card like I say, they'll just generate another bill. They may damage your credit. It's work with the credit card companies directly, and they actually have a third party, well, not a third party, but a group amongst them that's sort of I do know they're a not-for-profit type thing that has the mission of getting you back to being a good customer for them, and more importantly, getting their money back. So, yeah, depending on how much you use. Anyway, there's a lot of elective spending in here. You don't really know what it's going to take. You need to have cash flow to take care of your bills, but you need to structure things so that you can take care of your bills. All these are short-term things. Reducing everyday expenses to a certain extent, but really more importantly is not having a bunch of depreciable assets out there. Vehicles, RVs, ATVs, snow machines, whatever. A bunch of things out there on credit that are just eaten away. Or even like, I don't know, I guess you guys do what you want, but I don't have a whole bunch of entertainment type accounts. If you did Netflix and HBO and everything else, you could take up a pretty huge bill. So anyway, I was in Europe for so long that pirating is just it's frankly easier. Anyway, my moral decay. Here we go. Personal bankruptcy. Yeah, this is what I talked about before. Chapter 7 allows discharge of almost all debts. A funny old thing, not student loan debt. The government will maybe screw over the private sector, but they're not going to take a hit themselves because the student loans are done by the government. And so, yeah, you don't get to discharge those. You still got to pay those off until whenever. And this was, I think I said chapter 11. This is chapter 13, is the one that is kind of the wage earner plan, where the court takes control and says, oh no, you will pay. You're not skating on these people. Here, you don't have the assets. There's no way you're getting out of this. Here, you screwed up. We're going to let you keep some of your stuff, but you are going to be, a better person from here on out. So, anyway, I'm just telling you that, it is expensive not to have credit. And to wisely use credit in the bigger picture, not on credit cards, to buy real estate and stuff with borrowed money is that's the way wealth is done. Now, to use borrowed money for ridiculous things like buying crypto is probably in that category. I've guessed wrong more often than, but whatever. Sometimes it's just a matter you just write it out. Like getting back to that real estate example with the two doctors. If they wouldn't have been so overextended and the property value of their property dropped, but no, they were so leveraged, they had so much credit that they couldn't make the cash flow to keep the payments up, and they lost it all. So what you do for this one is get your credit report. Just go to that site, that ftc.gov, and look at it, but don't turn it in, okay? And then just do that one problem. I can't remember what I've got for the video this week, but it's there's one that's of the scammers in the UK. I'll try to include that one. It's kind of interesting, but it just shows just kind of the level of identity theft, and it's old and dated. There's new stuff out there. There's new schemes come up every day, but it's interesting stuff. But big picture is, you're going to be at a huge lifestyle and financial detriment if you can't manage credit and personal credit in specific. It can really enable you to get some good deals and make your life far simpler. So you gotta figure it out. You gotta have some discipline, or else life is going to be much harder for you. All right. Good luck until next week.